Lorraine, thank you for accepting this little interview. We're right now in Oaxaca and the third day of training with Lorraine and Howard, sir. Lorraine Stutzman is a very well recognized author in the subject, in the matter of restorative justice. And I'm very honored, Lorraine, that you have accepted to have this little interview. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And let's get into business right away. Lorraine, what are, according to your opinion, some of the dangers of implementing a restorative justice program when the players or the people that are involved are not very well trained or do not know well what it means to restore?
Well, some of the dangers when people aren't trained, I think, in engaging in dialogues is just that danger of creating further harm to either victims or offenders, particularly when it's in crimes of severe violence. I think there are times where we all feel like maybe we know what the answers are, or we make a determination about what people need without asking them about what their needs are. We just think, you know, if I were a victim, this is what I would want. But that may be so very different for others who are involved, who have been victimized, those who have caused harm. And so not making those determinations for people, having it be something that they self-determine, I think is a really important part of the process, and an important part of the training that we talk about is allowing for that and really asking people what they need and not making that determination for them.
All right, well, I thank you for sharing. I do agree with you. I think it is very important to have people really well trained, and I think that all the people involved should be trained too, or at least know to some extent what it means to restore. I work at the judicial branch of the state of Coahuila. There we are working a lot to make this happen, and there are many judges that know well what this is all about. But there's also another thing that we have to face: the fact that our society, the Western societies, tend to think of justice, criminal justice, and punishment as going hand in hand. Like, if there is no punishment, if there is no jail, then there is no justice. What do you think of that?
I certainly think there are times when victims would say, I just want the person in jail. And so I think I always want to allow for that. But I also think that we equate punishment with accountability, that we assume that they're the same things, that if someone is punished for something, that's all that it takes. You do the crime, you do the time, and then that's the end of it. When the reality is, when we ask victims what they need, they need answers. They need answers about why this happened to them. They need answers to what the future is going to look like. They have questions that only that person can answer. And that's when we talk about these kind of dialogues, we say that only that person who has committed the harm can answer those questions and be accountable to the person that they've actually harmed. And that, for me, is very different than punishment. It could include that because it's a difficult process, and there might be some other things that happen and some other consequences, but it's about accountability, which for me is just different than punishment.
And well, thanks. And how has this been taken by the society in the United States? One of the societies that has the most jails and most people in jails, and they have lobbyists promoting for more jails to be opened. How has this been taken by the society?
Wow, that's a difficult question. I think that we have to deal with the structure that we have in the U.S. in terms of who we incarcerate, how we are incarcerating more people, thinking that that's the solution to crime, rather than looking at not just how people are creating crime, but how it impacts people. And yet, on the other side, there are those who would say these kind of processes are helpful. There are certainly, when we started in Pennsylvania as one of the first states, one of the first of 4 or 5 that had dialogue programs in crimes of severe violence, that there are now over 30 states who are implementing those kind of dialogues. And so I think people are seeing the value. And yet, on the other hand, it's a prison industrial complex. We talk about that. I think we also have to acknowledge looking at who we incarcerate, that we incarcerate not only more people in the U.S. Than any other country in the world, but we're also disproportionately incarcerating people of color. African American men, by far more numbers, are being not only arrested but incarcerated. And so we have to look at the structural issues of racism as well, and classism, and more women are being incarcerated than at any other period. And so how we look at sexism, all of those things I think we also have to be addressing at the same time that we're talking about these processes to engage individual victims and offenders as well.
All right. And just to end up this little interview, I wanted to hear from you, in your words, what restorative justice is.
What is restorative justice? I think for me, how I generally define it, even though I know that those of us in the field often have a hard time defining it and coming up with a definition, and people would say that it's different things. But for me, it's a framework of how we work to build and develop healthier communities. So it may involve victims and offenders. It may involve people that we work with. It may involve our families. It may involve our organizations and our places of worship. That I think restorative justice provides a framework, and that framework has values and principles that we can engage then in processes to live by. And so for me, it's looking at that framework and not imposing a particular program, but rather a set of values and principles that guide the processes that we then engage in.
Well, thank you very much. I think it's been very, very interesting, all the things you've told us, and I think the people that listen to this podcast will find it also interesting. I hope you enjoy further your stay in Mexico. You're always welcome to come to Coahuila. I hope that we can one day have you there and to have you see what we're doing there in terms of mediation and also restorative justice, which are not the same things.
Yes. Well, thank you. I look forward to a return trip. It's been a wonderful trip so far.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.